Someone asked me how I was feeling one afternoon and I opened my mouth to answer and genuinely had nothing. Not the polite nothing where you say fine because it is easier. An actual nothing, a blank space where an honest answer should have been. And that frightened me more than I knew how to say. My name is Theo. I am 28 now. And what I am about to tell you is something that crept up on me so slowly that by the time I noticed it, I had already been living inside it for years. I was not always disconnected from myself. I want to say that clearly because I think it matters. There was a version of me, younger and less guarded, who felt things quite fully and was not particularly ashamed of it. I cried at things that moved me. I got genuinely excited about small things. I felt disappointment in a clean, uncomplicated way and let it pass naturally. I was, in the basic sense of the word, present to my own inner life. But somewhere across my early 20s that started changing. Not because of one event. Not because something dramatic happened that shut me down. It was more like a series of small decisions, each one individually reasonable, that accumulated into something I had not intended. The first time I remember consciously pushing a feeling aside was at 21, during a period of real uncertainty at university. Things were hard in a way I did not have the tools to process properly and the feeling of being overwhelmed was so uncomfortable that I found it easier to just keep moving. Stay busy. Keep doing the next thing. I told myself I would deal with it later. Later became a habit. The habit became a pattern. The pattern became a way of living. By the time I was 25 I had become genuinely efficient at redirecting my own attention away from anything uncomfortable. A difficult feeling would surface and before it had time to fully form I would already be doing something else. Picking up my phone, starting a task, putting something on in the background. I had built an entire system of avoidance so smooth and so automatic that I stopped recognizing it as avoidance. It just felt like how I was. I told myself I was practical, emotionally stable, not someone who dwelled, but what I actually was disconnected. From myself, from my real responses to things, from any honest sense of what I wanted or needed or felt at any given moment. And the strange thing about that kind of disconnection is that it does not feel like pain. That is what makes it so easy to miss. It just feels like a kind of flatness, a muted quality to everything. You go through your days and things happen and you respond in the expected ways and nobody around you can see that the responses are coming from somewhere hollow. Not even you, after a while. My closest friend at the time was a guy named Rory, who was 27. We had known each other for years and he was one of the few people in my life who paid close enough attention to notice things I would rather have kept invisible. One evening we were talking about something that had happened at work, a situation that by any measure should have bothered me, and I was describing it in such a detached and even tone that Rory stopped me mid-sentence. He did not say anything immediately. He just looked at me for a moment and then asked, in a genuinely curious way, if I was okay. Not surface okay, actually okay. I said yes without hesitating. And I meant it in the way you mean something when you have genuinely lost access to the information that would tell you otherwise. Rory did not push, but the question stayed with me in a way I could not organize away. Something about the way he had looked at me when he asked it. Like he was seeing a gap between what I was presenting and what was actually there. Like he could tell, even if I could not, that the dial had been turned too far down. But then something happened a few weeks later that I did not expect and could not redirect my way around. I was at a family gathering, the kind that happens a few times a year and moves through predictable rhythms. At some point during the evening my uncle, a man I had always respected and who rarely said anything unnecessary, pulled me aside. He had recently been through a health scare that had shaken the whole family. He looked different than he used to. More present, somehow, like the experience had stripped away whatever buffer he used to carry between himself and his own life. He said something to me that evening that I have not stopped thinking about since. He said he had spent 30 years being very good at not feeling things. He said he had thought it was discipline. Turned out it was just distance. And the distance had cost him things he could not get back. He was not talking directly at me. He was just sharing something he had learned. But it landed as if it had been said specifically for the version of me sitting in that chair. I drove home that night and sat in my car outside my apartment for a long time. And I tried, genuinely and deliberately, to locate something. Just any real feeling about anything. How did I actually feel about my job? How did I actually feel about the friendship I had been half present in for months? How did I actually feel about the direction my life was taking? The quiet that came back was genuinely unsettling. Not because there was nothing there, but because reaching for it felt like trying to pick up something through thick gloves. I could sense the shape of things but I could not actually feel them. The access was gone, and I had not noticed it going because it had happened so gradually and with such cooperation from me that there had been no moment of loss to mark. What happened next was uncomfortable in the way that necessary things often are. I started, very slowly and very deliberately, stopping the redirects. When an uncomfortable feeling surfaced I made myself sit with it instead of immediately moving away from it. Not for long at first, just long enough to acknowledge it was there, long enough to ask what it was and where it had come from. It sounds simple, it was not. Years of automatic avoidance do not unwind easily. The pull toward distraction was strong and familiar and much more comfortable than sitting in something unresolved. But I kept at it, night by night, small moment by small moment. One evening about 3 weeks in I was watching something quietly at home and a scene and it caught me completely off guard emotionally. Something about it reached something in me and my eyes filled before I had time to redirect. And instead of pushing it back the way I would have automatically done 6 months earlier, I just let it happen. It was such a small thing, but it felt like a door opening that had been sealed for a long time. And what came through it was not frightening. It was just feeling, ordinary, human, unmistakable feeling. And I had missed it without knowing I was missing it. I started talking more honestly with Rory after that. Not performing fine, actually telling him things as they were. He was not surprised by any of it. He had been waiting, I think, for the version of me that was willing to say real things. I also began keeping a simple journal. Nothing elaborate, just a few lines at the end of each day about what I had actually felt rather than what I had done. It forced a kind of attention I had been avoiding. And over weeks and then months it gave me back something I had not realized I was missing. A relationship with my own inner life. An ability to check in with myself and get an honest answer instead of a blank. I am 28 now and I still catch myself redirecting sometimes. The habit is old and it does not disappear completely. But I notice it now. And noticing it gives me a choice I did not used to have. I understand something now that I wish I had understood earlier. Ignoring your feelings does not make them go away. It just makes you a stranger to yourself. And being a stranger to yourself is a particular kind of lonely that is very hard to explain to anyone else, because it does not look like anything from the outside. You can function, you can show up, you can be present in all the visible ways while being almost entirely absent from your own experience. And the cost of that absence accumulates quietly until one day someone asks how you were and you reach for the answer and find nothing there. If you recognize any part of this, I want you to know that what you have is not emptiness. It is distance, and distance, unlike emptiness, can be closed. It takes honesty and patience and a willingness to sit in things that feel uncomfortable for long enough to actually feel them. But it can be closed. You are allowed to know what you feel. That is not a luxury. That is a basic part of being human. And it is always worth finding your way back to. Leave a comment below and tell me if this story touched something real in you.